Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Rogue Wave podcast, the frequency for all things pop culture and the disruptors behind it. Coming at you on Facebook.com/Rogue Matter Podcasts, YouTube.com/Rogue Matter, and available on all major podcasting apps after the live stream. Join the movement. Go Rogue, RogueMatter.com. I'm your host, Michael Dolce. As always, joined by my cohort in crime, the Lord of the Radio himself, Mr. Hassan Godwin. How you doing, sir?
You know, for the sake of legality, I don't know if we should openly call ourselves cohorts in crime. I don't know if that'll, it'll be very difficult to defend ourselves in a court of law if we're on record
snippet that gets taken out.
Yeah, if we're on record several times calling ourselves cohorts in crime, and now we're trying to defend ourselves, and the
isn't that
lawyer's going to be like, "Don't you readily
the Brotherhood of Evil
criminal?
Mutants?"
Yes, it kind of takes
evil?
It takes the mystery out of it, right? It takes all the ambiguity out of it. But all right, never mind.
I was not at that bank.
Yeah,
last week.
Even though I love to call myself the fun-loving bank robbers, I was not one of the bank robbers.
Not me. We were off last week. I took a vacation, which having two kids is not really a vacation so much as just time away. So it was still nice to have time away to recharge the battery when it comes to pop culture news.
Oh, that's what we were doing.
We had 2 new episodes of Loki drop, including one this morning. Very interesting. We will get into that next segment. We will spin the racks. Rob Liefeld in the news, both universally in the news and personally in my own inbox. I'll tell you about that when we spin the racks.
Don't let people invade your inbox.
Well, actually, not even. Maybe my social media. I guess it's the best way. My feed. Yeah. I'll tell you about my Sunday night shocker experience with Rob Liefeld. It's very exciting.
Okay.
But first, we have a new segment. It is called News Team Assemble. That's right. The best in pop culture.
Proud of these little moments. It's hard to take it away from you. It really is. It's like it bothers me to even poke fun at it because it seems like it's like robbing you of a lot of fun.
It is.
So
I love Anchorman's. You know, it's funny. Didn't love Anchorman when it first came out, or didn't go crazy for it. I was like, it's okay. And then kind of watched it one more time, and then all of a sudden, it just kind of seeps into your brain. All these I don't phrases and catchphrases and lines and
I say fair, but I don't agree. Having seen it myself several times.
You have actually seen it several times. Okay,
I've seen it. Well, by if you have home, if you had cable back in the old days when that would have come on cable, you have one or two, maybe 3 cable channels or whatever, and Anchorman is playing on all 3 of them at the same time,
right?
Over in heavy rotation.
Yep.
And you really got no choice but to see the movie maybe 2 or 3 times.
You're just stuck watching it.
Yeah, because it's not streaming. It's not on demand. It's like Anchorman's on again. All right, Anchorman. That's how I fell in love with Roadhouse, because it came on.
There's a lot of movies and TV shows that you just because it's on rotation.
Because it's on over and over again. You're like, all right, fine. This is one of my favorite movies now.
Now you have streaming. You don't even need that. But
that was my point.
So. There will never be
something away from it, though.
Something
is missing. Something is indeed lost from our old ways.
Yeah.
We will cry about that later. But anyway, go ahead. Go on with your show.
So the top pop culture stories from the week that was includes a new Shang Chi trailer. Promises action-packed martial arts adventure. One of the most anticipated films in the Marvel slate. Shang Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings has just received a second action-packed trailer. Gives further insight into his backstory and features some of the film's supporting characters, including Tony Leung's Wenwu, aka the Mandarin. As expected, the trailer also shows off more of the films.
Mandarin. Not to be confused with Guy Pearce.
Correct.
Also the Mandarin.
Correct.
The MCU.
No, not to be confused.
That's a little problematic. That's a little trouble. That's problematic for people like myself who remember stuff, as opposed to people who just like, I thought he was supposed to be the fake Mandarin. It's like,
you gotta give Marvel a little bit of the benefit of the doubt, though, in the sense that they are pretty good about continuity and they're pretty good. At least, the Marvel Studios anyway, has been very good up to this point about the continuity of what has come before.
You can give it to Marvel if you want. I mean, I'm just saying, I'm sure they'll explain themselves. I'm sure they'll find a way to explain around it, or they may do the other very strange and novel approach of not addressing it at all. Like, F it, we're not talking about it. I would almost understand if they did that.
Is there an instance to date where they've done that, where they haven't addressed something? I guess maybe with the recasting of Ed Norton with Mark Ruffalo.
Yeah, they did that. And also, they kind of they didn't, obviously the powers that be didn't really like the romance between the Black Widow and Bruce Banner. So they kind of just, it's over. We're not even going to really, we're going to address it in long gazes between the two characters.
Yeah, well, they did.
And then the Hulk's going to have, no, they didn't really address it. They didn't really talk about it.
They acknowledged it. They acknowledged it. It wasn't as if it had never happened. And my point being, they have not retconned. There's not anything I can think of.
I'm trying to explain to you my point.
Yeah.
They didn't. They addressed it with a look. They didn't explain why it stopped. They didn't explain it. They just never really bring it up again. It's just not a point of contention again. It's also the same, like at the end of Iron Man 3, how he destroyed all his iron suits, and yet he is in. He's in the next Avengers movie with another Iron Man suit and the Hulkbuster. So it's like, okay, well, I guess it's kind of like when Mangold did the same thing with the Wolverine, and Wolverine clearly did not have his metal claws at the end of the film, and then we went straight into Days of Future Past, and he had his metal claws again, and nobody said a word about it. And he grew back. The metal grew back. Doesn't matter. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Sometimes addressing it, they address it by not addressing it. It has happened. There is precedence for it.
I would be a little surprised at that. To me, the metal claws thing is a subtle storyline that we have not come across yet. And there's a story there. Subtle. It's one of the things there's one of the things like, well, there's a story there. We're not going to focus on that because that would take away from the story we're trying to tell here, versus an entire villain was the Mandarin. And it's an easy it's an easy explanation, right? It's an easy one.
Well,
there was a fake Mandarin. They used the legend of him to bolster him. No one actually knew this guy was. I mean, that's what it's probably going to be, right?
I mean, you could do that. Or they might, what I'm saying is they might not even say anything about it at all. They might just say, no, this is the Mandarin, and we're not talking about that Guy Pearce incident.
Let me ask you a
question.
Not
even going to bring it up.
Let me ask you a question.
Sure.
Did word get out from your memory from Iron Man 3 that there was no real Mandarin there, and that Guy Pearce just kind of claimed the mantle of the Mandarin? Or do you think in the underworld there is still a Mandarin, or people think there is a Mandarin? It
could be. I don't know. We wouldn't.
So maybe this guy's just like, I'm gonna be the Mandarin now.
Look, if they did that, it would be bad storytelling, but it would be awesome. It would be one of those things like, wow, that's really clunky, but I appreciate the meta that they went through in order to facilitate that. So, it would be both destructive and nourishing at the same time. I don't know how else to explain it. It'd be like, okay, that sucked, but that's also awesome.
Yeah.
However, we just don't know. There's just no way to know. So it is what it is.
So we normally do a segment called Trailer Truth or Trash, but we've been talking off camera about kind of rejiggering that. And what we're going to do, and I want to do this, we're going to do it with Black Widow. We're going to do it the week after. We're going to look after we watch the film. It's either the week after the week after that. We are going to Trailer Truth or Trash what we saw in the trailer, what it intimated was going to happen versus what actually happened. And so we'll do the same thing with Shang Chi, which I think is going to be very exciting, because there is one scene in that trailer that caught my eye, and I only watched it briefly. So I didn't, and I purposely, I didn't go deep and do any kind of research into what people's reactions to it was.
Because why
But
would we? We don't do research.
what's the deal with that mystery monster at the end of the trailer? What's the word on the street on that guy?
There's no word on the street. It's a monster. It's a freaking monster in the middle of, I mean, all right. But I mean, does that intrigue you? Are you intrigued by the monster, or do you think that's
I was actually completely thrown off by it.
Why so?
Not that this isn't a Marvel film, and so not that it can't, have these fantastical elements, and should have these fantastic. Look, they have plenty of fantastical elements, but everything we've seen so far to me was like, oh, this is cool. This is Marvel's attempt at a martial arts film. So even, the battles, and even in that second trailer when he's battling the Mandarin at the end, and there's rings. That'd be the other funny thing. There was actual rings being thrown everywhere.
The thing that upsets me the most, like the rings, they turned them into like bracelets instead of rings, and that doesn't upset me. But that's like I really like that aspect of the character in the comics.
Yes, I do too. I agree.
Rings, and
well, that's assuming that what we're looking at.
That's true. That's the problem with the speculation theater that we always engage in. While that's why I'm rejiggering the segment. You see that? Yeah, I understand, but I'm saying it's still whatever you decide to call the segment. It's still the same segment. It's still, what do you think this is? Because that's basically the nature of the piece right there.
Right.
We have no context. We have no information. We've been given nothing. So all we could do is go, and this is how I usually look at things, and I understand that nobody else looks at them the same way, and I'm not expecting you to, because you're not me. I'm me, and no one else is me. But I'm explaining to you why I'm always like not respondent to your questions when we get into these segments. It's because how I look at it is like, hey, that looks interesting. I can't wait to see how they explain that. It's like, oh, the big monster in the middle of the MCU. Explain that to me. It's the same with Doctor Strange, or the sequence in Endgame where the Sorcerer Supreme knocks Bruce Banner's soul out of the Hulk, right? And I'm like, that seems very metaphysical. How are they going to explain that in the midst of the, in the movie of of the MCU? And then, once you get to the film and you're like, well, it's all about time travel and, divergent branches of time and this and that, and it starts to get heavily convoluted. You're like, yeah, suddenly I don't really mind that the Sorcerer Supreme knocked Bruce Banner's soul out of the Hulk, because it all seems to fit in the milieu of, what the basic premise of the story is. So that's kind of fun. And I don't mind talking about that. Like, what do you think that is? That's great. But I mean, this whole thing is like, I don't think this really fits. We don't know whether it fits. We don't know whether it makes any sense or not. I mean, as I've said 100,000 times while we've been having these discussions, I think personally, and I don't expect you to agree, I think they've earned goodwill for us to, trust that they'll try to explain it. And then when you get there, and that's kind of part of my rogue rage today. When you get there, you decide whether it was done to your satisfaction or not. But at least give them the benefit of the doubt to be able to get it done, is what I'm talking about. So, there's a monster at the end of it. Monsters come up a lot of times in fantasy, and it definitely seems like Shang-Chi is going to skew to the fantasy aspects of storytelling. Just like Guardians of the Galaxy went to the kind of the science fantasy.
Right.
Well, in a universe where you have these like little pieces of qubits, or quartz that control time and control reality, and you wear it on this big metal glove and this giant mitten, and then you could blink out, half of the living beings in the known universe. Are you really going to die on the hill of monsters shouldn't be in the MCU? Is that where you're going to?
No, I'm not. Again, I'm not. It was one of those.
That's what I'm saying. That's all
it threw, exactly. It threw me for a loop, because it's, again, up until this very scene in the second trailer, it had seemed as if it was as grounded as can be in the MCU. a grounded martial arts thriller. So then to throw that in, I was kind of look, it's not something. Look, it's not something I'm like opposed to. I'm nearly saying I was like, whoa, that was like it took me out of what they had set up.
Anything be grounded if you have a homicidal
again, I agree. Yes. Every Marvel movie to date has done a nice job of reminding us that this is a shared universe that it exists in, and there are, where there's magic, where there's also space travel, where there's space travel, there's also gods and demigods. There are also coming soon mutants. There are also, radioactive spiders in the world. You know what I'm saying? There is always something to remind oneself that there are other aspects to this universe. So in this case, this is probably what it is. It is probably just a reminder that, hey, by the way, he exists in the same world as Tony Stark and as, Bruce Banner and as Steve Rogers, whereas the Eternals did that with their dinner conversation over in the trailer there. There's all these things that just remind us that this is an interconnected universe. And so in that regard, I don't have any problems with it.
It's a genre killer, but yeah.
I don't have any problems with it. But I will say in the context of a trailer, when they are throwing images at you at rapid pace, a lot of special effects, a lot of CGI, a lot of martial arts, a lot of great martial arts, to see that was kind of like, whoa, okay, this tonally took on a different tone at that point.
From the other side of this, though, don't you think something is lost on us? That you see a monster in a trailer for a movie and you're like, that doesn't seem to fit. I'm sorry.
That's exactly how my brain.
You didn't deserve that voice, though. I apologize.
No, it's weird. It's like you're in my head right now. Yeah. That's exactly how it.
Well, exactly. I know. I mean,
you would think that my voice would sound like my voice in my head, but no, it sounds like Steve Urkel. I didn't know.
Your voice sounds like
my inner monologue sounds like Steve Urkel. Yeah.
Your voice sounds like the voice in my head that I hear when you speak.
Gotcha.
But okay, doesn't matter. But you would think you would see something. I think in the old days you would see. And I know these aren't the freaking old days. I get it. But in the old days you'd see something like, holy crap, that's a monster. That's awesome. And nowadays everyone's like, what's a monster doing? And one of the problems with there's a myriad of problems with Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, the fourth Indiana Jones movie.
Yeah.
One of the biggest problems that people had was like, why are aliens in this movie? Spoiler alert, there's aliens in Indiana Jones movie. Why are aliens in this movie?
You just ruined it for 2008 me.
He should, 2008 you should have got to the movie theaters when the time was right. And it's like, well, wait a minute, why can't there be? I understand, why are there gates on this? It's a fantasy story. Right. None of this is true. You do realize that none of this is true. There's not a dude in a leather jacket with a bullwhip running around robbing graves, which is basically also what Indiana Jones is. And that's a little bit of a. Well,
they make the joke about that in Last Crusade.
Yeah, he's a grave robber. Why was there a 600-year-old knight waiting in a cave? Yeah. In Last Crusade. How come nobody had a problem with that? You know who had a problem with that? Me in 1988 or 89, whenever that movie came out. Yeah, and I'm sitting in there like, wait, so you're going to tell me this guy was just hanging out in this place with these cups, waiting for someone to show up in his cave?
Hell
seriously? Yeah. And then what I had to do? I had to say, well, the way the genre is, the way the way the franchise is, yeah, that's totally possible. They're saying that is a possibility. And these people complain about these things. I don't understand them. It's like, I don't know. 1930s look really stupid in the King Kong movie. Okay. Is that the reason I hate the movie? I'm not saying that you hate Shang Chi, but I just think the weirdness of the people nitpicking, I don't want to see that giant monster in the middle of it. That's supposed to be a martial arts movie. Why is there a monster in it? It's I don't know. Did you see Big Trouble for Little China? There are a lot of monsters in Chinese mysticism. Speculating, of course, that's what we're going deep into. I am no longer on the subject of what you said.
Okay.
I'm just talking in general.
You're talking in general why people are like, why is that there? Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, I'm expanding on like these. The problem with these things is like these trailers open up movies to early speculation, to precursory speculation and skepticism. There's a lot of skepticism in fantasy. Fantasy really shouldn't have any skepticism to it because it's supposed to be reaching out. I mean, by the definition of the genre, by the definition of the word fantasy, it's explaining that this genre is going to step out of the of linear time and space of conventional thinking, and it's gonna expand beyond the boundaries of whatever your conventional wisdom is. So to be like, well, why are there doesn't make any sense. It's just dragons in Game of Thrones. It's like it's a grounded world in reality, and then you throw dragons in. Like, are you kidding? Like, who's to say? Like, who's to say?
Yeah,
Superman throws things into the sun. Like, who's to say? None of this stuff makes any sense. None of it makes any sense.
Well, now
that's
the rings are rings. They're rings.
Yeah. And even in a sense, like when I was like, "Oh, that's annoying. Why are they bracelets instead of rings?" Then I had to go, "Shut up, idiot. They're rings. Like they're still rings. Like, just calm down."
Yeah.
How come he's got his metal claws back? It's like, yeah, okay. Can you imagine Wolverine running around in Days of Future Past with those bone claws? That would annoy the heck out of you, wouldn't you? Wouldn't it? And I'd have to say, yeah. So all right, you don't have time to address the little discrepancy there.
Right.
Fair enough. I was surprised Days of Future Past was like a decent movie. So I didn't really.
Movie, yeah.
Well, I'm not a fan of the X movies. So that's one of the X movies that actually got a pass from me.
Oh.
So there's 3 of them. There's only 3. So it's really funny. And Days of Future Past is one of them. The other 2 are Wolverine movies. So what are you gonna do?
Wait, movies. Oh, yeah, the Wolverine. Okay.
The Wolverine, and then
Loki. Yeah, I had my issues with that one, but that was decent. That was decent. All right, well, we will dissect Shang-Chi versus the trailer.
Listen, deal with the monster. Soon. Just deal with it, Dolce. Deal with it, Dolce.
I've already processed.
That's my answer to you on that. Like, yeah, you haven't processed. You're just shutting me up right now.
So Scarlett Johansson is ready to say goodbye to Black Widow after the solo film, and the reviews are in, by the way, too. It has been the embargo or whatever the case might be is over, and people are reviewing the film,
which is a little premature because we still got another 7 days before anybody can get to see it.
Well, I think that at this point Marvel is just like, we need to get this out. I mean, talk about a cursed film, right? Like, I mean, in terms of, it was supposed to be the launching pad for Marvel movies. Instead, it is a reminder of a year that was unforgettable. Do you know what I mean? Like, it was definitely something where I wonder if people are going to have like PTSD just finally watching the film, not having seen the film during the pandemic, but just being reminded that this film exists so much that they're going to set foot. It's going to go on. Everyone's going to be like, just like Frozen right there in the theater.
It's possible. I don't think so, though. I think everyone's going to be all right. I mean, I would understand it. I understand what you're saying. I'm not disputing what you're saying, but I think everyone's good.
So the interesting part about it again is that it's a prequel, and Scarlett Johansson is essentially saying goodbye to the role because, spoilers, she dies in Avengers Endgame. And she was talking about this with comic book.
You just ruined it for 2019 me.
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. Well, I hate 2019 me because 2019 me had no idea what was coming in 2020.
2019 you, fine. 2019 me did nothing to 2019 you. So, like, you shouldn't ruin it for me. You shouldn't.
No, he did too. I don't like 2019 Hassan either. I didn't like anything in 2019 because we thought we were living in a normal world.
What about 2021 Hassan? That's what we need to address right now.
I like that guy.
All right.
That guy's good.
All right, fair enough.
She says to comicbook.com, honestly, I feel like it feels great to leave a party when it's still raging. And I think that this film feels very much like it's alive and fresh and powerful, not the character. And I feel really pleased with it. I feel really happy with the work we've done for this decade of time. And, it's bittersweet to say goodbye, but if you love something, you need to set it free. Two things.
She's standing by it, but what the heck is she supposed to say? Don't go see it.
I know.
I made my money off of it. I don't think it's a very good movie. I just want to get this said. I just want to move on to other things. I want to start making mittens. You know, and
well,
I just
that's
don't
the
want to
overarching theme to these reviews that I'm seeing, though, right? And it is the question that has dogged this film. Like, why now? One review I saw, just to give the headline, not anything else. It wasn't too little. It's from Polygon. It wasn't too little, but it was definitely too late. You know, so that's that question. You know, why did it take so long?
What? Too late for what? You're still getting it, and we can think retroactively.
Right.
We're still getting it. It survives. I mean, Marvel could have buried this movie if they wanted to. I know they need to make money off of this. I know it's not altruism or magnanimity that
I mean,
that has a movie.
It does cost money, and they need to
But they could have. They definitely could have. They could have, if they wanted to. They could have buried it and called it pandemic. Like it's a victim of the pandemic, right?
Yep.
So they're bringing down stands behind it. Look, I'm not saying it's not too late. I'm not telling anybody that, hey, look, a story about that's the sole focus of the one of only two women in the Avengers, female superhero characters that Marvel has at the moment, not counting Mantis or Gamora or Nebula, who kind of came into the forefront in the last two Avengers movies. Yes, it is a little late, in franchise building. This should be her third movie, or whatever. Iron Man got 3 movies, Thor got 3 movies.
Sure.
Captain America got 3 movies. Hulk got 2 movies, technically. He got 2 movies. Only one that counts, but he got 1 movie. He got a whole movie to himself. So, and then there's a whole TV show on Falcon, and a whole TV show on Wanda. So everybody got a showcase, to an extent. So I'm not going to say it's late. It's not late. It's late.
Right.
It's late, and it's strange why they haven't. Maybe an argument could be made that isn't necessarily misogyny or sexism in general, that her character was best served being mysterious,
right,
in those films. But that's like a technical grab, that's not necessarily that's a speculative fiction that is favorable to the decisions that they made. I don't know what it is. I'm not going to say that it's not late, but too late is it kind of an overcorrect. It's too late for this, because that implies I'm not here for it.
Right.
I'm not ready to listen to whatever you have to say about this particular character, and that's clearly not the case.
Right.
If the critique is just a good film that I thoroughly enjoyed, but it's too late. No, that's incorrect. That's inaccurate. That's inaccurate.
Well, there is something to that,
really well. I think it will do really well.
Oh, I think it's going to do gangbusters. I think without a doubt. And I am plotting. I told you I am plotting to be in the theater for it. So
I don't understand that part. That part I don't get.
Yeah.
Like, look, like everyone was like, I've seen reviews recently on Fast 9, and they're like, this is the end of the franchise. This movie is so bad. This movie is so absolutely absurd and bonkers that it's bad. It's the end of it's over. It's over. It has nothing. And it almost made $100 million in pandemic dollars.
Yeah.
So now no one's talking about that. Everyone's talking about, whoa, this is pre-pandemic numbers that the Fast and Furious is making.
No, I heard yeah.
So okay, so like that just goes to show, like, these op-eds on the impact that this blah 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 will have on the culture, and whether they're nonsense. They're really nonsense, because it's not. If Black Widow comes out, also being on Disney Plus at the same time, so if Black Widow comes out in theaters and then a couple of days later on Disney Plus, and it still goes to like 78 million, 100 million,
right?
No one's going to talk about whether it was too late. They're
right.
going to say this was late. This should have been out earlier. We should have done this earlier. This would have been better to put in place of Ant-Man.
Right.
Just before just so her death could have even more of an impact. Right. But we're also using linear understanding of things to determine whether or not it has an impact or not. When these things are all on streaming, or you have them on a shelf on home video, you can watch them in any order you want, and then it really doesn't matter when it came out. And
that's like,
basically,
you know what that's like?
where
That's actually a great analogy
going.
to sometimes when a new record comes out from an established artist, right? And this is not as good as the ones that came out before, or this person sounds different, or, well, we're never going to get, that initial record ever again. It seems like the juice is gone, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But then you see it but then, they come out with another album right after, or the artist comes out with another album and it's like, wow, it's a return to form. It's great. And then all of a sudden you can go back and appreciate the record that came before as just part of the collection. It's part of the library. It's part of the assortment. That being said, we're at the phase right now, though. We're not there yet, right? That next solo female film, or that next Black Widow film, or that, person who's going to succeed Black Widow, possibly her sister in the upcoming films, we're not there yet. So all we have is what's here. And not only did we have to wait for this film in terms of having the first female Marvel character to appear on screen, superhero, I guess, to get her own solo film, but then we had to wait an extra year too. So it's an interesting dichotomy.
Look, I'm not arguing at all that this should have happened earlier. That equal focus should have been given to her and her character, especially if you're going to use the emotional beat of killing her off, as a focal point. That we couldn't have gotten this earlier. I'm not dismissing that. I'm just saying in its own way, in its own fashion, the way the world is working now. Once it comes out and it's in streaming, it won't matter when it came out. It'll be information that will be canon, and then we will retroactively apply the canon information that we've been given into the genre in and of itself. And I'm not saying that is the way it's always been, because it's not, but it's the way it is now. It's how things work now.
Right.
So like it's like a TV show. You've watched streaming television shows where it starts off basically in the middle, and then around episode 3 or 4, it goes into a complete flashback and explains everything that came before episode 1.
Mm-hmm.
But it decided to do act 1 as a third act instead of as a first act, like it was supposed to. This is basically the same thing. Not to say that it's the right thing, or whatever. I'm just saying it is what it is.
No, I know. Yeah. No, look, this is going to be one of those things that, unfortunately, I feel like is going to be a footnote in the Marvel history, the cinematic universe. I always remember, too, thinking how crazy it was back in 2012 that she was the only female as part of the group as well, too. There were a lot of things that I thought were interesting, even at the time when it first came out. I didn't think much of it, don't get me wrong, but I did notice that just based on all our 90s training of diversity, which has now come full circle, and we're reliving all that in today's world. So it's interesting to see, how that kind of comes full circle. But at the end of the day, the actor is going to have to move on until she's back again, which will also happen, because that's just how these things.
I don't know. These people do get old. It's not like a comic book where they could bring them back 20 years later and they're exactly the same age because they was in cryogenic freeze or on the moon, or something, like when they brought the original Jean Grey back.
Right.
Because they retconned that. Everybody forgets that Jean Grey actually technically wasn't the Phoenix, but nobody cares.
Nobody cares.
Nobody cares.
Final story. And I'm bringing this up not because I want to get into the should they or should not they argument, I should say.
And there will be an argument.
But Star Wars, Disney reportedly renaming Boba Fett's Slave One ship. Boba Fett's Slave One made its grand return during the second season of The Mandalorian. It's safe to assume the ship will be present in the Book of Boba Fett. A new Lego set coming out dropped the Slave One name and is instead going by Boba Fett's starship on the packaging. Per Jedi News, the lead designer revealed, "We're not calling it Slave One anymore. This is Boba Fett's starship. It's probably not something which has been announced publicly, but it is just something that Disney doesn't want to use anymore." The reason I brought this up, prior to this being quote unquote news, I actually saw people who had bought the action figure, posting on Facebook like, hey, the name is supposed to be Slave One. It looks like Disney is at it again, or it looks like Disney's dropping it, good or bad, indifferent. I'm not getting into that part of it. What I found interesting was that this was stuff that was posted to social media that then became news. Disney is not going out of its way. Lego is not going out of its way to try to market you buying this based off of them dropping the name. They're not going out there making a statement. It's not an activist statement. It was really something that was just kind of under the rug. Hey, we're just going to drop this because we probably don't think it's appropriate given the circumstances of the time, the sensitivity levels of people on social media right now in the world. We're just going to kind of do it. And it became, because of social media, now a big, stake in the ground news story. And why the other part of it that I found interesting, this is another example why social media should not be exempt in the way that they are because of Section 230. They are literally the proponents for publishing news. And I listened to this great podcast from Barry Weiss, who had Mark Cuban on. And Mark Cuban says that Facebook, any of these social media sites that don't just give you a running feed of user posts should not be protected under Section 230 because they are publishing to you. They're through their algorithms, they are picking and choosing which posts get the most attention and the most attraction. And obviously, people taking photographs of the Lego figure rose to the level that news sites then picked it up. And so this is just, again, this to me is another example of something has to be done about social media, and it's got to be held accountable for the harm that it's causing. Like, right? I mean, it is now, there's no elephant in the room anymore. It is a blatant, this is continually dividing us for stupid reasons. Is that a correct statement? Incorrect statement? What are your thoughts on what I just told you?
I don't know if it's a correct statement or not. I agree with
correct
it.
Opinion, I should say. Is it?
Well, I mean, that's what I'm saying. That's even worse because there's no such thing. I mean, I agree with it. It's an opinion, and I tend to agree with. Whether or not it's correct, I mean, it's correct to us because we agree with it. But I mean, I don't know if it's right. But yeah, there's definitely trouble in the delineation of news and information in the way, especially through the proliferation of social media.
Right.
It's definitely a problem. It's very problematic, and the problem is it's also very profitable, which means it's probably not going to go away. We're not going to be able to do anything about it because it makes people a crap ton of money, and no one's really going to step in to curtail it. And I mean, everybody could see what's happening. Everybody could see it's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
But no one wants to be the one to say, "Hey, all that money you're making, we're gonna actually put a genuine stop to it."
There's profit in tribalism. There is profit in division. There's profit in all that stuff. And I'm not opposed to profit.
These amalgamated companies are too big to break up, to slow down, to curtail. I mean, I'm sure there's a way to do it. But I mean, look, this is a liberal and a conservative point, right? Because everybody wants 230 gone, or doubt, so there's absolute unprecedented pressure to make this happen, where both sides of the tribe, that hate each other, are in complete agreement, and we're probably there's no traction on it. There's no movement on it. No one is even no one's going near it. The political accolades to anybody who actually addressed it and actually dealt with it and actually curtailed it would be unprecedented, but no one's got the clout to even take it on. So yeah, I would argue
that both sides disliked each other prior to social media, and social media has driven that stake into hate.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter. I mean, yeah, maybe. We don't know.
So hopefully
we were in a country at war with each other in the 1800s, way before the telephone, much less social media. So, I mean, look, the vitriol was, it's always been there. It's just a part of us. And that's not an American thing. That's a human thing.
Sure.
I don't like these guys. I want them gone. That's just this thought,
Yeah.
I don't like this guy. I don't like this guy. He parks too close to my car. I want his car gone. It's just, it doesn't matter.
I feel like, though, however, that kind of thought process was relegated to the few and has increased to the many versus where, and this could be my own take on it.
Who knows?
So, but all right. When we come back, we're going to do Hassan's Rogue Rage, and Hassan, because it ties right into the next installment of Marvel's Loki. Find out what he's raging about. Find out what we think about episode 3 and 4, because we were off last week, so we got to catch up. We're gonna play catch up when we come back. Welcome back to the Rogue Wave podcast, frequency for all things pop culture and the disruptors behind it. We do this every week. We give Hassan the stage to talk about and riff on whatever is on his mind. We call this Hassan Godwin's Rogue Rage. And this week just happens to be adjoining with the big Marvel TV show out there right now, which is Loki. So let her rip, my man. You will intro our Loki reaction as part of your Rogue Rage. Go ahead.
First of all, nobody gives me the stage. I take the stage, okay? All right, let's just straighten that out, first of all. Second of all, look, I don't have any problem with Loki. I like it. It's fine. Tom Hiddleston is as amazing as usual.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people had issues with the third episode.
Yeah.
Last week's episode. I've heard many takes on it. I agree with some of them. I disagree with others. I think it was it was an episode, which I notice now is the standard way of saying something about something without saying anything. It's like, well, what'd you think of episode 3? It was an episode. Instead of saying it was good or bad.
Right.
So definitely it was an episode. Look, Loki is becoming my least favorite of the 3 Marvel Disney Plus television shows. Now, that doesn't mean it's the least good.
Mm-hmm.
Or that doesn't mean it's coming in third place. That doesn't mean it's not fantastic. That doesn't mean it's not one of the greatest things.
It just means you think it's terrible and should burn in eternity.
Yeah, well, through internet terms, that's only what I could mean. That it should stop and Tom Hiddleston should be canceled and everything else. But really, what it is look, it started off as this really high concept situation. In my opinion, this is my opinion. Mm-hmm. It's way up its own ass now.
Mm.
Okay, so
elaborate, por favor.
It's kind of hard to. It's kind of become, it feels to me like in the last 2 episodes, it's really started to fall in love with how different it is. Mm. And so now I'm going to lean back and just I'm going to be a little routine. We've established enough of a variance on linear storytelling that we could start, being routine in certain ways. And we could start making some rudimentary jokes, like, for instance, last night's episode or today's episode where he keeps getting beat up by Sif for cutting her hair.
Sure.
And that joke went on a little too long for me, but that's not the problem. I actually don't have a problem with Loki. I have a problem with this kind of form of storytelling where they seem to they front load it with all the innovation and intrigue, and then they just fall back on Adventure of the Week.
Sure.
And then they also do these foreshortened seasons. So by the time when anything is really finally catching its stride, you're looking at the season finale like next week.
Right.
So it's sort of hard to explain. It's not really a rage against Loki. It's a rage against this kind of new, and I've done this before. We've had this conversation before.
Mm-hmm.
It's a rage against this new format where it's like, okay, we're gonna knock the building down with this, with this concept in these first few episodes. But it's sort of like what they say about where you can never write anything or write anybody smarter than yourself.
Okay.
Right. In actual, we can never come up with a concept that totally changes the genre, because we're genre people, and we're eventually.
Well, that's what Stan Lee used to say, right? Like, people don't like change; they like the illusion of change.
No. I'm not even talking about that. I'm saying
that statement could apply to what you just said.
I'm saying we cannot create a concept that comes out that expands or defies genre, because we are genre people, and we don't know how to get out of the genre. Okay. So we create something so fantastical or so amazing or so thought-provoking, and then what we're going to have to backpedal heavily on it in the ensuing episodes, because we don't know how to don't know how to stay at that level. We don't know how to exist in that headspace that we just created. So it just kind of falls back on, all right, so now we're just going to keep going through these portals, and we're just going to keep chasing each other around, and we're just going to, then I'm going to get into a bar fight, with a whole bunch of guys. And even though I'm a god, for some reason, I'm not strong enough to take on a whole bunch of guards from the, just weird, quirky stuff that goes on. It starts to feel like filler after a while. Because we were done with the high concept stuff. Now they return to form in episode 4 with getting kind of back into the concept.
Spoilers to anyone who hasn't seen it. Go ahead. Just doing our job in case. I'm gonna spoil the heck out of it.
We're supposed to talk about it, so
no, I know
it's not.
You're supposed to give a warning. That's the etiquette.
I wasn't going to give anything away.
I will. So just giving. I'm just. Yeah,
but you can wait until you talk about spoiler. Never mind. Forget it. Move on.
No, you said it returned to form in episode 4.
Yeah. I'm done.
Did it, though? I never thought it left form. I thought episode 3, to me, I'm actually surprised you found that to be more filler, because to me, I found that to be the necessary... I didn't say it was filler, though. You said, in your rage, what you had just said,
I said basically that we can't, you'll never be able to from genre people, you'll never get a concept so high that it's going to defy genre. They're going to fall back on genre. Now, the episodes were fine in and of themselves, but in my opinion, the promise that came from episode 1 could not be fulfilled. Yeah. So eventually we're going to come up with this really high budget, amazing concept. And we're gonna use that as a bookend, and then we're gonna slide right into Monster of the Week kind of territory, because that's just we're incapable of sustaining high concept for the entire run of these 6 episodes.
You were hoping for more Inception, and you got more Dark Knight Returns.
If you feel like contextualizing it that way, I don't know, it's fine.
Okay.
I like neither Dark Knight nor Inception, so I would not have used those movies. But certainly, like, if you want to use an example of a high concept movie that went all the way,
Dark Knight Rises. Sorry, Dark Knight Rises. Sorry, that's what I meant.
Christ, dude.
Well, Chris, I was using Christopher Nolan as the analogous part of that. So here's my question to you. I'm a little surprised you did not, like I said, I'm a little surprised you didn't like.
Didn't say I didn't.
Some of the stuff they did in episode 3, because I thought that it actually fleshed out Sylvie's character really well.
Never said I didn't.
I also think that what they did in episode 3 and 4 was make me realize. I thought everything fit. First of all, I thought episode 3 and episode 4 fit with what they did in episode 1 and 2. I'm not saying you didn't, but this is my take on it. I thought that it fit with everything they had done. I know you had said that there was some outside chatter about episode 3 not kind of fitting in with what was set up in episode 1 and 2. Because
I
what it
didn't say
basically,
that. I said most a lot of people are having trouble with the fact that they can't seem to pin down whether Loki is supernatural or not. Because in 1 minute he's a god, he's reestablishing, he's holding up buildings, and he's taking on, he's holding his own with Thor in fights and stuff like that. And the next thing, he's getting beat up by a bunch of clerks and day players from the Now I know they neutered his powers to some extent, but since they never bothered to define his powers in the first place, it confuses a lot of people.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's one thing, right? Is by leaving the door open to be able to do whatever you want, you also leave the door open for questions as to, and those kind of questions can always pull you out. I never got the concept of gods in the Marvel universe to begin with, because theoretically speaking, you're a god, aren't you? I mean, he kind of even says that in one of the previous episodes too. He's like, I'm a god, shouldn't I, be able to do stuff in this TVA? And he can't. So in that respect, I kind of go with it, and I'm not excusing the question because I think it's a valid question, but I'm still like, okay, I don't need this question answered to enjoy what I'm watching. What they did was with the show though, is we thought we were watching a show about Loki, but what we're really watching is we're watching Tom Hiddleston's Loki. But based on episode 4, what we're watching is a show about Loki. I love the fact that he's falling in love with himself. That makes it's weird, and it is. And Owen Wilson says it's weird, but it also kind of makes sense because who else is he going to love but himself? So I think that's kind of cool. I wasn't expecting, and again, spoilers for anybody out there, I wasn't expecting Owen Wilson's demise in this, but I was also a little upset that by killing Loki, quote unquote, killing him at the end, it actually immediately took away from the impact of like, wow, are they going to actually do that? Because that to me was like a Mars Attacks kind of move where I'm like, oh, all right, they're taking Owen Wilson out. It's a bold move, Cotton, and it.
But immediately
gets erased.
Yeah, but I mean, that's the problem. What I said about the high budget concept.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing I said when we were reviewing the first. When we were reviewing the first episode, I said it's a genre breaker, because when you can now manipulate time, nobody dies. You can set it up, you can reestablish it till the point that nobody dies, so that none of the deaths really have any kind of impact. Yeah. Now we don't know if that's what they're going to do, but I mean, bottom line, it's like it doesn't come as a shock. Yeah. Because you're working at the time variance authority. It's like you can. And then the fact that they reveal, as a spoiler, that they reveal in all of them. See, this is the other problem I have with it. Yeah. And I don't know if it's a real problem. Okay. I really honestly don't know if it's a real problem. It's a problem I have personally. I don't know if it's a problem with the material. The fact that they were all variants was something that I felt had to have been a reality even back at episode 1. Mm-hmm. I'm like, for this all to make any sense, for all these people to be here and pull out of it, and in the way they so easily incorporated Loki into it, that must suggest that they're all variants in their own way, so that they could exist in this space. Right. Right. So the fact that they use that in episode 4 as a dun 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 reveal. Sure. It's like, well, wait a minute. Now it seems like you're behind your own concept, because in order for your concept to make any sense, that would automatically have to have been a given. Well, that's an interesting issue. Yeah. No, that's interesting that you bring that up, though, because in doing the series called The Mainstream, which I did with Talon Caldwell, and when we wrote an alternate reality story, we would have these long discussions about, well, how many alternate worlds are there, and blah, blah, blah. And we decided, look, no, let's keep it simple. There is one timeline, and then there's one alternate reality, and that's the conflict. Because if we don't, we're opening up all these questions as to how this all actually works together. And so we decided to simplify our world by doing it. Loki, like you said, whether it's a problem or not, by going as big as they did in terms of the concept and in terms of where it's going, they leave themselves vulnerable to the critiques that are going to be valid critiques in terms of the variants and in terms of release, saying that they're all variants. I have a tough time wrapping my head around what that even means. And then the reveal
which wasn't much.
Well, if you're talking about like in the sense that the universe uses everything, right? There's no excess of anything, right? These people would have all had to come from somewhere. They couldn't have been all created out of a vacuum. Now they all thought that they were created by
created out of a vacuum, right?
Yeah, but it's impossible. Now this is the problem.
Yeah,
I would have thought for the genre to make any sense, it would have had to have been a given that they were all variants.
Right.
So for them to go around thinking that they're not variants now makes it like, well, wait a minute, what did you think you were? Like, if you understand a concept of what you're doing for a living,
right?
How do you not stop to consider that you are also outside of the of the mainstream timeline, right? And then where do you think that your energy, your existence has come from, right? Unless the Time Lords are gods in and of themselves. And they may or may not be, but for you to think that they gave birth to you, and that you have it's just, to me, it's like, well, it's just like when I was watching it and they said it, I was like, well, of course there's variants. You know, that's not a revelation. They use that as though it's a revelation.
I'll give kudos to you though. I mean, that wasn't something that I necessarily pegged from the beginning. So,
but that's what I'm saying about a high concept. Like if you're going to use a high concept and then you're going to fall back on episodic, slapstick to an extent, which is not a problem.
Yeah.
This is what complicates my argument. It's a nuance of the argument. I am still not, and I want to repeat, I want to make this very clear. I am not criticizing the show.
Sure.
I'm criticizing the approach to, we're going to do something, high test, but we're not going to really think it all the way through. Or we're gonna be very vague on the edges, and then we're gonna reveal it very slowly, and then and we're gonna blur a lot of the lines so nobody really thinks too deeply about it. And then we're gonna add some really charismatic characters in it, like Tom Hiddleston and whatever. So we'll be mostly watching them. The other concept of the fact that she's hiding, the other Loki, Lady Loki, Sylvie, is hiding out. Yes, I said Sylvie. Is hiding out. In disasters,
right?
Another kind of very high concept aspect of it, and then they kind of, but now we're stuck here because I don't have one. I don't have a temp pad. We broke my temp pad. Well, how was she hiding out in the apocalypses all this time without a temp pad? Like little.
Well, yeah, I guess she had it because she does show in the episode 4 that she stole the temp pad from Miss Minutes. So she did have one, and the question is, where did that one go? We don't know.
Where did that one go, or how was she using it in the first place? Because they would have found her if she was a little girl when she escaped.
Yeah,
and she's grown now. That she's doing this for a long time,
right? Without
a temp pad. So these are things.
I'll agree with you on that. Yeah, I agree with you on that in terms of. When they showed her, I appreciate that the thing that I do appreciate about the show is they are not afraid to give backstories. They're not afraid to dive into the characters, the motivations. That's why I enjoyed episode 3 so much. I enjoyed the exchanges between Loki and Loki and Sylvie. I enjoyed all that stuff because you get to learn more about that character, and I appreciate that they were giving us that. Okay, this is the episode we find out where she came from. But I agree with you.
Really.
What's that?
But it wasn't.
What do you mean?
We still don't explain how she was a variant in the first place.
Right. I agreed. That's my point though. The execution of said, like I said, I appreciate the effort. I didn't love the execution on that either. So I agree with you in that sense. But overall, I'm curious as to where it's going to go. I'm curious as to, who is the puppet master in all this.
Yeah, I'm still curious as to how it all wraps up, and the fact that they're dealing with the authority in itself. They're all androids. I mean, that's great. I mean, that's fine, and the show is fine. There's no reason. There's nothing that's unless some kind of natural disaster or something terrible happens. There's nothing that's going to stop me from watching the next 2 episodes. And like I'm saying, I'm enjoying it.
Yeah,
I do enjoy it. I do think it's very well done. I love the look and feel of it. But what I get annoyed about in general, and I'm not. That's what I say. I'm not really talking about Loki so much as the trend that Loki is setting. Is we come up with something really high concept, and because we are slaves to genre, we break the genre by coming up with the concept, and then we fall back on genre in order to keep facilitating episodes. And it's like, well, you if you're gonna break genre, then break it, and then do something and be crazy, or maybe don't break the genre. So so emphatically. I don't know, like I'm saying, it's just like it seems like this was a really great concept that you didn't think all the way through because of the slow way you're revealing everything, or you're revealing things that should be, in my opinion, that should be a given. You're revealing them as big, as big plot sequences, when it's like, yeah, but didn't we know that already? Or isn't that like a given? Like, wouldn't she have had to have a temp pad all this time to be able to do what she's doing? And if she's awaking memories in them that they've already had, that's another thing that made me crazy about this particular episode. It didn't. All this time, you get the impression that Mobius is like a consummate bureaucrat. Like he's been, he's a dogged, pursuer of order or whatever.
Yeah,
he knows his business. He had Loki's number. Every one of their conversations, he had the upper hand at every one of Loki's conversations. So then, just to suggest, oh, you're a variant, then that suddenly breaks his brain, and then suddenly makes him start to, ask questions and go against form. It's like, well, a character like this would have been asking these questions about himself and about everybody else from the beginning, because he's not they didn't display him as a company man. He was already kind of a maverick. He was already outside of the box, which he was being reined in, by his boss, who is an utter bureaucrat. She's a machine. She's a cog in the system. She's not she doesn't have a personality anymore. So little things like that. It's like, well, that doesn't quite make any sense. That a hint of another life would derail these people so badly to the point where they all start to betray the system in and of itself. And so that makes it a little less interesting. It would be better if they knew that they were variants and they were dedicated to the system, and it was and that the Lokis, in using their mischief, their magic of mischief to reveal to them the truth, and it doesn't work. That would have been a dilemma. That would have been like a stumbling block. It's like, yeah, I know I have I know I'm a variant. That's why we're here.
Right.
That would have been even more intriguing. But the fact that, like, oh, this is so easily unraveled. These people have infinity stones in their desks, but they come apart that easily with just a suggestion of another life. Like Mobius talking about, like, oh, I would be someplace where I could water ski. Like, what? Do you hate your life that badly? Like, it just, to me, it starts to unravel. The story starts to unravel as easily as the characters unravel, with the hint or the suggestion that they're being lied to in a very intricate and like non-linear society that they live in, that they could easily be unraveled by a little piece of linear information. Kind of unraveled it for me personally.
I don't disagree with anything you said.
It doesn't break the story.
I don't disagree with anything you said there. Still better than Winter Soldier.
Yeah, I don't know why you think that's that unnerves me in any way, but okay.
What do you guys think? Chime in. Let us know. We're on youtube.com/Rogue Matter. We're on facebook.com/Rogue Matter podcasts. We will comment on both. When we come back, a very abbreviated Spin the Racks, including my very short but comical Rob Liefeld story when we come back. Welcome back to the Rogue Wave podcast. We like to do this from time to time. We like to talk about the source material that will make its way onto the big and small screens. We call this segment Spinning the Racks. So Rob Liefeld is in the news because that's what he does. Full disclaimer, I'm a big Rob Liefeld fan. I really am. I think at this point, I grew up on his artwork. We did a whole podcast with Fabian Nicieza about X-Force #1, which is celebrating its 30th anniversary this month, which is amazing. And he's back at Marvel with an X-Force Kill Shot 30th anniversary one-shot. That's not really the news, though. That's the funny part about Rob Liefeld. So this is from the website The Beat. So go support The Beat with Heidi McDonald. Between the Captain America and Fantastic Four, it seems 2021 is the milestone year for a few Marvel characters. It also marks the 30th anniversary of the debut of X-Force. And to mark the celebration, Marvel officially announced a special X-Force Kill Shot from Rob Liefeld. He's been openly critical on social media of the current direction of the X-Men franchise, but it seems they have been able to put aside their differences in order to celebrate X-Force. The new X-Force project comes on the heels of Liefeld's recent blow-up with Archie Comics. See, this is the part I don't get. And this kind of leads into my small comical storyline.
Okay.
People were retweeting Rob Liefeld this weekend on social media. I happened to see a couple things, and he was voicing his displeasure with how comics are done, and at some of the major publications, right? And I think he's totally entitled to his opinion. I mean, the guy's been around for 30 years. Love him or hate him. You can hate his artwork. You can hate him as a person. He's one of the most impactful creators we've ever had, right? I mean, for better.
He allowed me to go. He allowed me to go to art school. So I mean, there you go. Because comic books are a dead end as far as my family was concerned, or whatever. And then they saw that 501 Jeans commercial.
There you go.
And they were like, maybe there's something to that.
Maybe there is.
You may now go to art school. So that's kind of. I accredit him for waking my family up.
So I've mentioned
Spike Lee.
I've mentioned this before. He's commented on a couple things I've posted sometimes, and most of the time it's usually like I'll say something and he'll be like, "I was the man, not Todd McFarlane." But whatever, we're friends on Facebook, and it's awesome. It's kind of like that is a neat thing about social media. You get to actually interact directly with people you either grew up loving. People that you respect, people that you admire, or just in general, right? You get to interact with quote unquote superstars that you never really got to do, back when we were growing up, right?
Right.
But then I go on Twitter, he's got me blocked. I don't know why. I don't know what I've said. I don't know what I've done.
We're friends on Facebook. Part of a blockchain. You might be part of a blockchain where you.
I don't understand what There was one time he posted about an NBA game, and I wrote, well, that's just the first game. Who knows what's going to happen in the series? I'm not going to predicate it. I'm not going to predicate one game. Because
of that?
I think he did, because he wrote back. He's like, thanks for explaining basketball to me. And I'm like, and he was obviously being sarcastic. Maybe that was it, because that's the last interaction I've had with him on Twitter. And it was really
he's still
harmless.
Friends with you on Facebook, and he doesn't even realize. No, now he will. Now you've just ruined that. He listens
to the show.
Okay. Doesn't matter.
And I can't tag him on Twitter, so he doesn't even know this. And we're gonna even talk about him. But I just find it amusing that, I mean, a couple weeks ago we were talking about his deal with Archie Comics, and then he got pissed that they released a variant cover that reveals a plot twist. Archie actually apologized and said it was not supposed to go out. It was a retailer incentive variant cover that supposedly got released and wasn't supposed to, and it does reveal a plot point. I get it. I don't know anything about the story, but I read that I read why it reveals the plot point. What plot point it revealed. And then he's like, I'm done. Like, I'm done with it. I'm like, wow, dude, like you're very fickle. Like, you're very fickle. You're blocking me. You're breaking up with Archie over an accidental post. You're blocking me on Twitter for criticizing your basketball. Like, dude, that's
what I'm saying. That's what we were talking about before. Like, look what social media does to people. Like, it's just not. It's not good. It's just not good. Like, how many good interactions have I can. There's one thing about social media that I can say honestly.
Yeah,
it's great. It's like a great thing. I get to keep in touch with people I would never see. Personally, people in other countries or people in other states that some people I grew up with, some people I actually met on social media, but that's about it.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I've met a couple of people on social media that have become friends and that that I talk to on a regular basis. And that's it. I mean, there's no other benefit to any of this.
Let me ask you a
because
question.
everything else is overblown. Everything else is just live in a realm of extremes.
Yeah.
That it's just impossible in human life for us to be. The standards are impossible for us to live up to. Go ahead. What was your question? I'm sorry.
Are you on Instagram?
I have an Instagram.
You have an Instagram.
I am not on Instagram.
Have you played the Instagram algorithm game yet?
I have not.
You should do this. Actually, this is just adding to what else.
Adding to all my consternation already. You want to add more to it? That's what you're saying.
Just put just type. Not even type. You just click on the search explore button, because then it'll give you things that it thinks that you want to see.
Based on what?
I guess based on what you post and or what you put. I have no idea. I have no idea what
I
you
don't
interact
post
with. What
anything
you like
on Instagram. I post nothing on Instagram, so it's gonna give me completely nothing.
I got Rob Liefeld unboxing something, and I get beautiful women. That's it. I get that's it. Lots of beautiful women, and then occasionally some.
So your
Comic-Con
life is Rob Liefeld
stuff.
and hot chicks. That's the whole. That's what Instagram has broken your whole life down to.
Yes.
Gotcha. Nobody else, but in the entire comic book industry.
No, I get other. I do get it. But that was one of the. When I played the game, that was one of the ones that popped up. It was like hot models from all across the world.
I'm not playing it.
And
I don't want the internet to tell me who it thinks I am. I don't need it. I've got enough issues with who I think I am and being wrong about that on the regular basis. So like, I don't need the internet to chime in. I really don't.
Yeah, it's pretty.
So I'll skip it.
I'm telling you, yeah, crazy. Nothing but beautiful women and Mark Cuban now, which is what we mentioned today. Play the game.
Yeah, because it's listening to you.
Listening to you. I know.
That's not good.
I know.
That's not good.
Play the game at home, people. Play the game at home.
Don't do it, people.
It's disturbing.
Save
All
yourself.
right, we've had a great show tonight. We will be back next week. Long running. The next vacation we get is probably going to be. We'll see.
Christmas.
We'll see. I might slip in a random summer Wednesday here and there, but no. Next week we've got Kevin Sharp on. He is an expert in comic book history. He's a comic book historian. He's going to tell us all about Black Widow, all the stuff we might need to know before we watch the movie. We'll do a little preview of the movie based on some of the reviews as well. We'll give our predictions sure to go wrong, and we'll dive more into Loki as we always do. We will see you guys next week.